One thing before this story starts. When the moment hits, and it will hit you, drop one word in the comments, whatever you felt. I read every single one, every time. Now, what follows is an archaeological survey document. It was prepared by Dr. Keth-Vel-Ra of the Galactic Historical Preservation Society, 107 years after the events described. She was assigned to document the remains of Colony 7 on the third moon of the Kessel System, which had been sealed and preserved following the events of the Kessel incursion. Her task was to catalog what remained. She cataloged everything. The document you are about to read is her catalog. It is not a narrative. It is a list of objects, what each object was, what condition it was in, and where the object's condition or position or content told her something, what that something was. She worked alone. She worked for 11 days. By the 7th day, she had stopped being a professional and started being something else. The document reflects that. Pay attention to the margins. Galactic Historical Preservation Society. Field Survey Document. Survey Site, Colony 7, Kessel System, 3rd Moon. Survey Date, Standard Cycle 45,219 through 45,230. Lead Surveyor, Dr. Keth-Vel-Ra. Purpose: full physical catalog of site contents for historical preservation classification. Site status: preserved and sealed since Standard Cycle 45,112. Site designation: Category 1 Historical Site Significant Event Classification. Surveyor note at document header: I was told this would take 3 days. It took 11. I was told it would be a routine catalog. It was not routine. What follows is my attempt to document what I found as accurately as I can. I have tried to maintain professional standards throughout. I have not always succeeded. I have included the places where I did not succeed because I believe those places are part of the document. Sector 1, Main Corridor. Object 1. Description: Standard Colony Corridor, length approximately 400 meters, connecting primary habitation modules to utility sector. Condition: structural integrity intact. Wall surfaces show evidence of significant thermal stress in sections 2 through 7, consistent with documented engagement activity. Floor surface shows wear pattern inconsistent with normal foot traffic, heavier on the right side of the corridor, approximately 60 centimeters from the right wall, for the full 400-meter length. Analysis: the wear pattern on the right side suggests that whoever moved through this corridor repeatedly did so while maintaining contact with the right wall. This is a tactical movement pattern. The weight distribution suggests a single individual making repeated transits. Estimated transit count based on wear depth: between 800 and 1,000 individual passes. Surveyor note: the corridor is 400 meters long. 800 passes is 640 kilometers of walking this corridor, alone, in the dark, back and forth. I measured the corridor twice because I did not believe the number. The number is correct. Object 2. Description: junction point at meter 200, where main corridor intersects service access tunnel. Condition: service access tunnel sealed from the corridor side with emergency barrier material. Barrier is hand-applied, not mechanically deployed. Material used is a combination of standard emergency sealant and what appears to be adhesive compound repurposed from maintenance supplies. Barrier is approximately 40 centimeters thick at its thickest point. Analysis: the barrier was constructed to prevent access through the service tunnel from the utility sector into the main corridor. The construction is careful and thorough. The use of maintenance adhesive compound suggests the builder used whatever was available rather than purpose-built barrier materials, which had apparently been exhausted or were unavailable. The thickness of the barrier indicates multiple applications over time rather than a single construction event. Someone built this barrier in stages, returning to reinforce it. Surveyor note: I tried to find when the barrier was built relative to other events at the site. I cannot determine the precise sequence. What I can determine is that whoever built it kept coming back to make it stronger. That is a particular kind of determination. The kind that happens when you have time to think about whether what you are doing is sufficient, and you decide it is not and you go back and do more. Sector 2, Utility Sector. Object 14. Description: Central Utility Room, primary function prior to the incursion, maintenance equipment storage and operational hub for colony life support systems. Current condition: significantly modified from original configuration. Original equipment largely intact but repositioned. Central workspace cleared. Secondary workspace created in northwest corner using repurposed shelving and equipment cases as desk surface. Analysis: the secondary workspace in the northwest corner shows evidence of extended occupation. The positioning in the corner with sightlines to both entry points is deliberate. Whoever used this workspace positioned themselves to see who was coming. The workspace contains one modified communications unit, described separately as Object 15, one personal data device, described separately as Object 16, 11 empty nutrition provision containers stacked in the southeast corner of the workspace, 3 tools described separately as Objects 17 through 19, one item that does not fit a standard cataloging category described separately as Object 20. Surveyor note: I spent more time in the northwest corner than anywhere else in the site. I kept coming back to it. It is small. The person who used it was large by human standards. I know this because of Object 26, described later. They would have had to fold themselves into the corner. They worked there anyway, because it was defensible. Object 15. Description: Communications Unit, Standard Colony Model, significantly modified. Modifications include extended antenna array constructed from repurposed wiring and antenna components from at least 3 other devices. Power source modification allowing independent operation disconnected from colony power grid. Signal encryption module, non-standard, apparently constructed rather than installed as a factory component. Condition: functional at time of survey. Battery depleted but unit intact. Analysis: the communications unit was modified to continue functioning after the colony power grid failed or was disabled. The extended antenna array significantly increases transmission range. The encryption module is of particular interest. It was not part of the original unit and was not a standard colony component. It was built from components that could be found in a colony maintenance department. Someone who maintained colony systems understood those systems well enough to build a functional encryption module from parts. The unit's last transmitted signal, recovered from its buffer memory, was sent on standard cycle 45112, which is the date of the site's sealing. The content of the signal is documented separately as Appendix 3. Surveyor note: I read Appendix 3 3 times before I could continue. I have included it in full because I think the document requires it. I am aware that this is not standard practice. I am doing it anyway. Appendix 3. Content of final transmission from Object 15. Transmitted standard cycle 45112, 1423 standard time. Duration 4 minutes 11 seconds. Recipient: Galactic Emergency Coordination Center, Kessel Relay. This is Marcus Webb, Colony 7 Maintenance, Kessel 3. I am the only person left on the site. The last evacuation shuttle departed approximately 72 hours ago. I stayed because someone needed to. That is not an explanation of my reasoning. That is my reasoning. Someone needed to. I am transmitting because I want a record to exist of what has happened here and what is happening here and what I have been doing. I'm not transmitting because I expect rescue. The incursion force outside this facility is larger than anything a rescue operation could address, and the corridor situation is not one that more people would improve. I am transmitting because I want a record. Here is the record. I have been holding the main corridor for 72 days. The approach from the utility sector has been sealed. The approach from the East Habitation Module has been sealed. The approach from the main entrance I have been unable to seal because the main entrance is where I need to be able to see. I have been able to maintain the facility's life support functions for the populated sectors. The sections that were inhabited, I mean, not the sections that are currently inhabited. which is 1. I have maintained them because I know these systems and because maintaining them felt like the right thing to do even though there is no one here to benefit from them. This is the record. The facility is intact. The systems are functional. I have not been able to determine the current status of the evacuation shuttles or the colonists. I hope they are safe. That is all I have. This is Marcus Webb. End of transmission. Object 16. Description: personal data device, standard civilian model. Condition: battery depleted, device intact. Contents: recovered via external power connection. Device contains 847 individual entries in the personal journal function. Entry dates span from standard cycle 45,041 through 45,111, the 71 days between the departure of the last evacuation shuttle and the day before the final transmission. Surveyor note: I read all 847 entries. I did not do this as part of the professional survey. I did it because I could not stop. I have included selected entries in Appendix 4 through 7. I want a note for T. He record that 847 entries in 71 days is approximately 12 entries per day. The person who wrote them was not keeping a record for posterity. They were keeping a record because writing was how they were managing the situation. You can tell in the later entries that the writing is faster, less careful, more honest. The early entries are the entries of someone maintaining professionalism in an unusual situation. The late entries are the entries of someone who has stopped pretending. Appendix 4. Selected journal entries, early period, day 1 post-evacuation, everyone is gone. I watched the last shuttle until I could not see it anymore. Then I went back inside and I did a full systems check because that is what you do when you are responsible for a facility and the facility needs to be checked. The life support systems are nominal. The power grid is stable. I have food and water for approximately 400 days if I am careful. I am going to be careful. Day 4. I have sealed the service tunnel access. It took 3 sessions to get it solid enough that I am satisfied with it. I used the emergency sealant and the adhesive from the Habitat module repair kit. I know this is not ideal. I know this is also not standard procedure. Nothing about this situation is standard procedure. I am doing what makes sense with what I have. Day 9. I have been thinking about what I am doing here. I mean this in the practical sense, not the philosophical one. What is the practical purpose of one person holding one corridor in one facility on one moon? The practical answer is, this facility's records are intact. The research data from the Kessel survey program is here. The medical supplies that were not evacuated with the colonists are here. The infrastructure that the colony was building toward is here. None of these things are irreplaceable, but all of them are worth something. I'm going to try to keep them worth something for as long as I can. Day 14. I have not been sleeping well. I have been sleeping in the northwest corner of the utility room. It is the most defensible space in the facility that still has access to the systems I need to maintain. I have set up a secondary workspace there. It is smaller than I would like. It is what I have. Appendix 5. Selected journal entries, middle period, day 28. I want to record something I have been thinking about for the past several days. I have been thinking about why I stayed, not the reason I gave in the transmission someone needed to. That is true, but it is not complete. The complete reason is something I am still working out. Part of it is this: I know this facility. I know these systems. I know which circuits will fail first and what to do when they do. I know where the backup power connections are and how to access them. I know the layout well enough to navigate it without lights. I know it the way you know a place you have taken care of for a long time. And when you know a place like that, it is difficult to leave it to whatever comes next without someone who understands it. Day 35. I found something in the storage room today. A box of items that were left behind in the evacuation. Personal items from the colonists. Someone's collection of small carved figures. Someone's collection of printed photographs. Someone's book, a physical book which is rare enough to be notable. I have put them in the northwest corner of the utility room. They keep me company. Day 47. I had an interesting shift today. I use the word interesting because the alternative is alarming and I have decided to use interesting. The main corridor showed evidence of approach from the East Habitation Module side. The barrier there held. I reinforced it afterward. The reinforcement took approximately 6 hours. When I was done, I was very tired. I ate and I slept, and in the morning I was less tired. This is the cycle. Appendix 6. Selected Journal Entries, Late Period. Day 58. I'm going to be honest in this entry because I think honest records are more useful than careful ones, and I have been being careful for 58 days, and I am tired of it. I am frightened. I have been frightened for 58 days, and I have not written it down because writing it down felt like admitting it in a way that I thought might make it harder to keep going. I think I was wrong about that. I think writing it down is actually easier than not writing it down. I am frightened. The facility is still secure. The systems are still functional. I am still here. These things are true at the same time as the frightened. Day 64. I have been thinking about the word home. This facility is not my home. My home is on Earth, which is approximately 400 light years from where I am sitting right now. I have not been to Earth in 7 years. I came here for a contract. I am a maintenance technician. I maintain things. I have been maintaining this facility for 7 years, and in that time it has become something that is not home but is the closest thing I have to home in this part of space. I think that is why I stayed, not because someone needed to in the abstract sense, because this place, which I have maintained and repaired and kept running for 7 years, needed someone, and I was the someone who knew it. Day 71. This is probably my last entry. Not because I am stopping the journal. I will write more if there is more to write, because I think tomorrow is going to be a significant day. I have done what I can do with what I have. I want to note that I do not regret staying. I want that in the record. Whatever happens tomorrow, I do not regret staying. Object 20. Description. Item found in northwest corner of utility room workspace, identified as a human personal object. Specific type. A small plant growing in a repurposed food container approximately 12 centimeters tall. Species. Unidentified to Surveyor, apparently brought to the facility by the occupant or grown from seeds. Condition. Alive at time of survey. Plant is healthy and actively growing. Analysis. The plant is growing in a container that was modified to allow drainage using holes made with a tool. The soil in the container is a mixture of standard growing medium and material that appears to be composted organic material from food waste. The plant was being actively maintained. Someone who was alone in a sealed facility for 71 days was composting their food waste and using it to grow a plant. The plant is the only living thing found at the site other than the standard microbial colonies associated with life support systems. It is alive because it was tended. Surveyor note. I sat next to the plant for approximately 40 minutes on day 7 of the survey. I know this is not professional conduct. I sat next to it because it was the most alive thing I had found in 7 days, and I needed to be near something alive. The plant is small and unremarkable, and it is alive because a person in an extremely difficult situation thought it was worth taking care of. I do not know what to do with that information professionally. Personally, I found it the most significant thing I encountered at this site. Sector 4, East Habitation Module, Object 41 through 89. Description. Personal effects belonging to colonists who evacuated Colony 7 during the incursion, left behind in the evacuation process. Objects include clothing items, personal data devices, food items, personal mementos of various types, one collection of small carved figures, one collection of printed photographs, one physical book, title. A Field Guide to the Birds of Northern Europe, Earth publication, date approximately 2 centuries prior to the incursion. Condition. All objects in good condition. Objects appear to have been gathered from their original locations and consolidated in a single room in the East Habitation Module. They have been organized carefully, clothing folded, devices charged and stored, mementos arranged on a surface in a manner that suggests deliberate arrangement rather than casual placement. Analysis. The consolidation and organization of these objects was not part of any evacuation protocol. The objects were left behind in the evacuation. Someone gathered them from their original locations, brought them to a central location, and arranged them carefully. The only individual known to have remained at the site after the evacuation is the individual identified as Marcus Webb. Surveyor note: I stood in this room for a long time. He knew the people who owned these things. He had worked alongside them for 7 years. They left in a hurry and they left things behind, and he gathered the things and organized them, not because he needed to. Not because it served any tactical purpose, because the things belonged to people he knew and he did not want them scattered. I looked at the collection of small carved figures. There were 11 of them. A family of 11 figures, it appeared. Someone had brought them from home and left them behind in the evacuation, and he had gathered them and put them somewhere safe. I do not know why that particular detail is the one that made me stop, but it was. Object 90. Description: logbook, physical paper found on work surface in main corridor junction point. Covers period standard cycle 45,041 through 45,111. Distinct from personal journal device, this log documents facility status, system checks, maintenance activities. Written in technical language consistent with professional maintenance documentation. Entries are daily. Condition: intact. Some water damage on final pages, consistent with minor atmospheric seal breach in main corridor junction point. Analysis: the logbook is a professional maintenance document maintained throughout the 71-day period. It shows daily system checks, notes on barrier reinforcement, records of life support system status, notes on power allocation. It is the document of someone doing their job. In a sealed facility with no colleagues, no supervision, no external accountability, and no one to read the log when it was complete, they kept the log anyway. The log is complete, accurate, and professionally maintained through the final entry. Surveyor note: the final entry in the log dated the day before the final transmission reads as follows. Day 71. System status: life support nominal, power grid stable, barriers holding, external situation unchanged. Facility secure. All systems operational. End of entry. That is the final entry. The facility is secure. All systems operational. He wrote that on the last day. I think about what that required. To write that on the last day in the same format as every previous day. To maintain the professional record through to the end. I think that required something that I do not have a professional word for. I have a personal word for it. The personal word is grace. Appendix 7. Selected journal entries days 63 through 68. Day 63. I found something today in the records room. The colony's original charter documents printed and framed. Someone had them on the wall of their office. I took them down and brought them to the utility room. I do not know why. They are the colony's founding documents. They say things like, in the spirit of cooperation between species, this colony is established to serve as a center of research and cultural exchange for the benefit of all. That was the intention. That was what this place was for. It still is, I think, in the sense that the records are here and the research data is here, and the intention is still intact even if most of the participants are elsewhere. I hung the charter on the wall of the utility room. It seemed right. Day 65. I want to write about something that is not tactical or operational. I want to write about silence. The facility is quiet, not the quiet of a place where people are sleeping or working or living. That is not silence. That is a kind of full quiet, a quiet with people in it. This is the other kind, the kind where the quiet is complete. I have been in this kind of quiet for 65 days. I have learned some things about it. You can get used to it. Not comfortable in it. I do not think anyone gets comfortable in this kind of quiet, but you can learn to work in it, to think in it, to do what needs to be done without the ordinary sounds of other people that you usually do not notice until they are gone. Day 67. The plant grew another centimeter. I measured it because I wanted to record something growing. Everything else I am recording is holding or maintaining or resisting. The plant is growing. I find this disproportionately meaningful, and I am going to allow that. Sector 3 West Habitation Module, Object 31 through 40. Description: Storage Room West Habitation Module. Contents prior to incursion: General colony supplies. Current contents: Significant modification. The room has been converted into a secondary food storage area. Original colony emergency rations have been supplemented with what appear to be homegrown food items. Small containers of growing plants at various stages of development, dried herbs, what appear to be preserved food items prepared from colony materials. The growing containers show the same modification technique as the plant in Object 20, holes for drainage, composted soil supplement. Analysis: The individual who remained at the site was engaged in active food production throughout the 71-day period. This is significant because it indicates long-term planning. Emergency rations provide approximately 400 days of sustenance for one person if used carefully. The individual was not consuming emergency rations carelessly. They were supplementing them with homegrown food items, extending the effective supply and providing nutritional variety. The growing program was established early in the period and maintained consistently. The most advanced plants are approximately 60 days of growth, consistent with establishment in the first 2 weeks of the occupancy period. Surveyor note: he planted things in the first 2 weeks, when he had been alone for less than 2 weeks, with whatever was happening outside the facility happening. He found containers and composted soil and planted things. Not because he was hungry, the emergency rations were sufficient, because he was thinking ahead, because he was planning to still be there when the plants were ready. That is a particular kind of commitment. You do not plant a 60-day crop if you are not planning to be there in 60 days. Object 26. Description: Maintenance worker's uniform, standard colony issue, found in utility room near secondary workspace. Condition: significantly worn. Fabric shows extensive patching and repair using materials not matching original fabric as sections of other garments, adhesive repair compounds, what appear to be hand-sewn reinforcements in stress areas. The repairs are careful and thorough. Size: large by human standards. The uniform shows evidence of extended heavy use across the full period of occupation. Analysis: the uniform was repaired multiple times over the period of occupation. The repairs show increasing improvisation over time as matching replacement materials became unavailable, with later repairs using whatever was at hand. The final repairs, identifiable by the adhesive compound used, were made within the last week of the period. Someone was maintaining their own clothing with the same attention they were maintaining the facility's systems. Surveyor note: I spent a long time looking at the repairs. The early ones are neat. The later ones are rougher. You can tell he was tired or the light was bad or both. But he kept doing it. He kept his uniform functional. I think this says something that I find difficult to articulate. He maintained his own equipment with the same professionalism he maintained the facility's equipment. He did not let either deteriorate past the point of function. 71 days alone, and he kept everything, the systems, the log, the plant, himself, kept everything functional. That is not a small thing. I have been struggling to describe why it matters so much to me, and I think the reason is this. It shows that he had not given up. You do not repair your uniform on day 70 if you have given up. You repair it because you are planning to need it tomorrow. Appendix 8 document found in main corridor. Note: this appendix was not part of the original survey plan. I found the document on day 9 of the survey, in a sealed container in the main corridor junction. The container was labeled in human script, which my translation systems rendered as, "In case someone finds this, please read." I am including the document in full because I believe it is part of the historical record, and because I believe the person who wrote it wanted it to be found. The document reads as follows: to whoever finds this. My name is Marcus Webb. I was the maintenance technician for Colony 7 from Standard Cycle 45046 through the date this was written, which I believe to be approximately 3 months after the last evacuation shuttle departed. I am writing this down because I want someone to know some things that might not be in the official record. First, the systems were maintained throughout. Life support, power, communications, all functional at the time of writing. I know how to maintain these systems and I maintain them. If someone comes back to this colony, the system should still be working. Second, I organized the personal effects that were left behind in the evacuation. They are in the East Habitation Module, Room 4. I tried to organize them carefully. I thought whoever owned them might want to find them in order. Third, there is a plant in the utility room northwest corner. It is a flowering plant that one of the colonists brought from home. It was left behind and it needed tending. I have been tending it. It should still be alive when you find this. Please keep tending it if you can. The plants need water every 2 days. Fourth, I do not have a fourth thing to add. I stayed because someone needed to. I am not sure that is a complete explanation. It is the only one I have. Whatever happens, I hope everyone who evacuated is safe. I hope the colony continues eventually. I hope this document finds someone who wanted to know these things. Marcus Webb, Colony 7 Maintenance. Please water the plant. Sector 5 Main Entrance. Object 94 through 101. Description: Main entrance to Colony 7 primary access point. Condition: complex. The main entrance shows evidence of the most significant engagement activity of any sector in the facility. The approach corridor, approximately 30 meters in length, shows thermal stress damage across the full length of both walls. The entrance doors, which are blast-rated to Class 4 impact resistance, show deformation consistent with multiple high-impact contact events. The doors are closed and secured. Analysis: The main entrance was the primary point of external pressure throughout the period of occupation. The engagement evidence suggests that the entrance was subjected to sustained contact, beginning approximately 3 weeks into the period and continuing through the final days. The individual at the facility was not engaging in offensive operations. The evidence pattern is consistent with defensive action only. The entrance was held. The doors were not breached. The facility was not entered from this point. The entrance that was subjected to sustained pressure for approximately 50 days by an external force that was larger than one person was not breached by that force. Surveyor note: I stood at the main entrance on day 10 of the survey. The doors are heavy. The deformation on the external surface is significant. Someone held these doors from the inside for 50 days. Not a military unit, not a specialized defensive force. One maintenance technician who knew the facility systems and had decided that someone needed to be there. The doors held. I ran my hands over the deformation on the external surface and then over the internal surface, which is unmarked. The internal surface is unmarked because the doors held. I do not know exactly what the person inside felt while those doors were being tested. I know they held. I know the log entry for every day after the pressure started says, barriers holding. Same format as every other entry, barriers holding. Object 102. Description: Final object catalogued in survey. Found on work surface in northwest corner of utility room, partially obscured by personal effects. Identified as a photograph printed on physical paper of a group of people. Estimated number in photograph, 31. Setting appears to be an outdoor gathering, trees and structures visible in background. Human subjects appear to be from multiple generations, adults, elderly individuals, children. Condition: good. Photo shows evidence of handling over extended period, edges worn, surface shows fingerprints consistent with repeated touching. Analysis: The photograph is not a professional image. It is the kind of image taken at a family or community gathering, informal, candid in places. The individuals in the photograph are not in any database available to the survey team. They are presumably people known to the occupant of the northwest corner workspace. The photograph was touched repeatedly over the period of occupation. The fingerprint patterns and the edge were consistent with an object that was handled daily. Someone, alone in a sealed facility for 71 days, touched this photograph every day. Surveyor note: This is the last object I catalogued. I catalogued it on the final day of the survey, day 11, before I sealed the site and left. I spent the full day with this photograph. I looked at the 31 people in it. I do not know who they are. I know they were important to the person who was here. I know that when things were very difficult in that corner, in whatever the nights were like in a sealed facility with external pressure on the main entrance in those nights, he had this. 31 people who mattered to him on a piece of paper that he touched every day. I sealed the site and I left, and I have been thinking about the photograph since. I think about all 31 people in it, and I think he stayed for them too. Not just for the facility, not just for the systems, for the idea that home exists and people are in it and the work you do matters because it creates the conditions in which they can live. He maintained the colony systems with the same dedication he would have maintained a home, because to him, I think, the colony was part of the home, and you do not abandon the home when things get difficult. You stay, you maintain, you keep things running until they can be running for people again. That is what he did. That is all he did. That is everything. Final section, Surveyor Conclusions. I want to note at the conclusion of this document that I have been a professional archaeological surveyor for 22 years. I have surveyed sites of significant historical importance across 14 systems. I have catalogued the remains of battles, of colony failures, of civilizational events of various kinds. I have maintained professional standards in all of those surveys. I have included in this document several places where I did not maintain professional standards, because I believe those places are part of what this document is. I found at Colony 7 the remains of a specific human being's specific experience over 71 days in a specific situation. The experience was not abstract. It was not historical in the distant sense that most of my subjects are historical. It was very close. The plant is still growing. The journal entries are still in first person. The log entries are still dated. And somewhere in those 71 days in that northwest corner, with the carved figures from his colleagues and the plant he was composting and the log he was keeping, a person who maintained colony systems for a living held the line in a facility that every other species had abandoned. He did not hold it because he was a soldier. He was not a soldier. He held it because he knew the place and someone needed to, and he was the someone who knew it. He sent one transmission in 71 days. He said, someone needed to. That is not an explanation. That is the fact. The fact is enough. I am recommending this site for Category 1 preservation with special significance designation. I am also submitting, separately, a request that the individual identified as Marcus Webb be formally recognized in the Galactic Historical Record. Not as a soldier, he was not a soldier, as himself, a person who maintained things, who kept things running, who did not leave. I do not know a better reason to be remembered. Surveyor's personal addendum, not part of official document. I am adding this section to the official document against standard protocol, and with full awareness that it is against standard protocol. I am adding it because I spent 11 days at Colony 7, and I have been trying for the 3 weeks since I left to write the official conclusions section in the language of official conclusions, and I cannot do it. Every time I try, I find myself writing something else. I am going to write the something else here and attach it to the official document and let the society decide what to do with it. Here is what I actually want to say about Colony 7. I have been in this profession for 22 years. I have catalogued the remains of significant events. I have catalogued them professionally, and I have tried to maintain the appropriate distance that professional cataloging requires. At Colony 7, I did not maintain the appropriate distance. I sat next to a plant for 40 minutes. I read 847 journal entries. I held a photograph of 31 strangers and thought about all of them. I did not maintain the appropriate distance, and I do not think I was wrong not to. Because what I found at Colony 7 was not the kind of thing that benefits from appropriate distance. What I found was the most detailed record I have ever encountered of a single person doing their job in the worst possible conditions. Not because they were required to, not because they were trained to, because they knew the place and someone needed to be there and they were the someone who knew it. He kept the log in the same format every day. He repaired his uniform when it needed repairing. He planted things in the first 2 weeks. He gathered his colleagues' belongings and organized them carefully. He touched a photograph every day. He wrote, "Please water the plant," in a note he sealed in a container in a corridor because he wanted whoever found it to know that the plant needed water. I am recommending formal recognition not because he was a soldier or a hero in the military sense, because what he did was something I think deserves a name. He was the person who stayed. That is the whole thing. The world sometimes requires a person who stays. He was that person. For 71 days in a sealed facility on a moon 400 light-years from Earth, he was the person who stayed. I want that named. I want it in the record. I want the record to say there was a person here. He maintained the systems. He kept the log. He tended the plant. He stayed. He was Marcus Webb, Colony 7 Maintenance. He was the person who stayed. Galactic Historical Preservation Society, Archive Note. Added to file following submission of survey document. The Society received Dr. Keth-Vel-Ra's survey document for Colony 7 and has reviewed it in full, including the personal addendum. The Society notes that the addendum does not conform to standard documentation protocol. The Society also notes that the survey document is the most complete record of the Colony 7 incursion event available in the archive, and that the personal addendum is, in the Society's assessment, part of what makes it complete. The Society is accepting the document in full, including the addendum, and is filing it under the Significant Individual Acts classification, in addition to the Standard Incursion Event classification. The Society is also noting, for the record, that Marcus Webb was located alive following the eventual recovery operation at Colony 7, conducted Standard Cycle 45,118, 6 years after the incursion. He was found in the northwest corner of the utility room. The facility's systems were functional. The log's final entry, written the morning of the recovery operation, reads, "Day 2612 since evacuation. System status: life support nominal, power grid stable, barriers holding, external situation changed, ships overhead unknown, facility secure, all systems operational, end of entry, he was alive. The plant was alive. He had been in the facility for 7 years. He came out of the facility on his own feet, read the recovery team's identification documents, said, 'Glad you're here,' and asked if they wanted a cup of something hot because he had been working on getting the beverage system calibrated for the past month, and he thought he had finally got it right. He had. The Society is noting this. It is noted." Dr. Keth-Vel-Ra submitted one more document to the Society 8 months after the survey. It was not a professional document. It was a personal letter, addressed to the Society's director, asking permission to add one item to the Colony 7 archive. The item was a cutting from the plant in the northwest corner of the utility room, which she had taken on the final day of her survey and had been growing in her own home for the 8 months since. The plant had grown considerably. She had learned its spec. Wise name, it was a flowering plant native to a region of Earth called the Mediterranean, and it flowered once a year in a specific color that she described in her letter as a color that does not have a name in my language but that humans call lavender. She wanted to add the cutting to the archive because she felt that the plant was part of the record, not as a biological specimen, as evidence. Evidence that something living was maintained in that facility for 7 years by a person who thought it was worth maintaining. The Society granted permission. The cutting was added to the archive under Object 20A, plant, living, descendant of Object 20, still growing. Dr. Keth-Vel-Ra visited the archive 4 times in the following years to check on it. The archive notes record that on her last visit, she stood next to the plant for approximately 40 minutes. She left a note that said, "It is flowering." The note is in the file, the plant is still growing, the file is complete. Lesson in this story is about a word. The word is stayed. Every other species in Colony 7 did the rational thing. They calculated the situation, they determined that the situation was not survivable for anyone who remained, and they left. They were right. The calculation was correct. The situation was not survivable for anyone who remained, except that one person remained, and they survived, not because the calculation was wrong, because the calculation was not the question they were answering. The question they were answering was not, "Can I survive this?" It was, "Someone needs to be here," and they were the someone who could be here, and so they stayed. They stayed and they kept the plant alive and they kept the systems running and they kept the log and they gathered the things their colleagues had left behind and they arranged them carefully in a room where someone would eventually find them. They did all of this not because they knew it would matter, because it was the right thing to do with the time they had. That is the whole story, that is the whole lesson. You cannot always know if what you are doing will matter. You can know if it is the right thing to do with the time you have. Marcus Webb knew, he stayed. Drop one word in the comments. Whatever this story did to you, just one word. I am in the comments reading every single one. Subscribe to UG Human HFY. The next story is a completely different voice, a completely different angle. That is the promise.